Imagine walking into a room, and somehow everyone, strangers, colleagues, even your closest friends, gravitates toward you, seeking your advice, trusting your judgment, valuing your presence without question. It feels like an invisible force surrounds you, a magnetic energy that you can neither see nor explain, yet it pulls others in. Now, think about the opposite. Have you ever felt dismissed, ignored, or even rejected, despite knowing you had something valuable to offer? The frustration, the sting, the gnawing self-doubt, it eats at your confidence, whispering that no matter how much you try, the world refuses to acknowledge your worth. Why does this happen to some and not others? Why are some people unignorable in their impact, while others seem to drift through life unnoticed, their presence barely registering in the minds of those around them? Perhaps you felt this painfully, wondering if your voice, your opinions, the very being will ever matter in the spaces you inhabit. And if that resonates, let me warn you, most people live their lives trapped in an invisible prison, their influence limited by habits they don't even recognize. You see, the reason some people are constantly rejected isn't luck, looks, or privilege. It's something far subtler, far more powerful, and far more accessible than you might imagine. It lies hidden in the patterns of thought and action, the invisible architecture of their daily routines, shaped over decades by choices most dismiss as trivial. What if I told you that the difference between being rejected and being impossible to reject comes down to habits so simple, yet so profound, that they could be the single most overlooked secret to commanding respect and connection in every room you enter? Imagine learning these habits, not as a quick fix, but as a transformation of your inner life, your emotions, your discipline, your very essence. You might be thinking, is this another gimmick, another self-help fantasy? But what if the ancients already knew the answer? What if Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus had already uncovered the hidden mechanics of influence long before the term social magnetism was ever coined? And here's the paradox. The closer you are to mastering these habits, the less you even try to impress anyone. The more you embody them, the more natural and effortless your presence becomes. Yet, almost no one teaches these principles in a way you can live and breathe daily, a way that transforms rejection into connection, indifference into attention, invisibility into inevitability. By the end of this video, you won't just know these habits, you'll understand them in a way that rewires your thinking, reshapes your emotional responses, and equips you to walk through life with a quiet, unstoppable authority. But before we dive into what these habits are, you need to see why almost everyone fails without them. Most people spend their lives chasing approval, mimicking charisma, and performing in ways that are hollow, desperate, and easily ignored. They invest energy in being liked rather than being respected. And this tiny misalignment is why doors close before they even get a chance to enter. Imagine spending years polishing skills, building credentials, and yet constantly facing rejection because no one senses the inner strength and integrity that actually matters. You're about to discover that there's a very different way to live, a way that blends timeless Stoic wisdom, modern psychology, and real-life strategies that can make you unshakable in the eyes of others. And the first insight might shock you. It's not about charm, confidence, or networking hacks. It's something far simpler, something that most people overlook in their desperate quest for acceptance. Yet it is the cornerstone of every person who is truly impossible to reject. In this journey, you'll not only learn habits that build influence, but also the hidden truths about human nature, perception, and decision-making that most people never grasp. You'll see why rejection is rarely personal, why influence rarely comes from effort alone, and why there are invisible levers in life that only the Stoics understood and that you can master today. So as we embark on this exploration, remember, each moment you hesitate, each glance of doubt or worry is an opportunity lost. But if you stay with me until the very last habit is revealed, you will walk away not just informed, but transformed, with tools that create a magnetic presence no one can ignore. Are you ready to uncover what the ancients knew and why almost nobody today applies it? Because in just a few paragraphs, we will peel back the layers of human behavior and reveal truths that are as shocking as they are liberating. Secrets that can change how people see you, how they respond to you, and most importantly, how you see yourself.
It starts with a simple moment, one that most people dismiss as insignificant, yet it holds a lesson that can quietly shape your entire life. Picture a man walking alone through a crowded marketplace. He's neither loud nor flashy, his clothes are ordinary, his gait unremarkable. Yet there is something about him that makes people step aside, pause for a moment, and almost unconsciously pay attention. What is it? Is it charisma? Luck? Genetics? Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, might have called it the result of internal alignment. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. The man in the marketplace doesn't try to impress, he simply embodies his principles. And this is where most people fail. They confuse attention with approval, noise with respect. They expend effort trying to be seen, heard, liked, or loved, but forget the quiet force of consistency and self-mastery. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient wisdom. Studies show that humans are wired to unconsciously sense authenticity. Mirror neurons fire when we witness someone behaving with congruence, when their actions match their intentions. We are drawn to it, even if we cannot articulate why. Consider Seneca's advice in Letters from a Stoic. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Notice that he does not say, surround yourself with the popular, or seek those who flatter you. True influence comes not from imitation, but from deliberate cultivation of your inner character. Now, let's step closer to the personal, because this principle is not abstract. Recall the last time you felt truly rejected or ignored. Maybe it was at work, at a social event, or even in a family gathering. You spoke your mind, shared your ideas, or offered help, and nothing happened. Silence, indifference, perhaps even ridicule. That sting you felt is more than emotional. It is biological. Humans are social creatures wired to detect status and trustworthiness instantly. If someone senses incongruence, uncertainty, or desperation, the mind's instinct is to withdraw. And yet, the man in the marketplace, the one who commands attention effortlessly, he has mastered the subtle art of internal consistency. He understands that influence begins within. He knows the truth Epictetus emphasized. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In modern terms, his emotional regulation, his self-discipline, and his perception of control create an invisible aura that draws people in. Every gesture, every pause, every choice is an extension of a philosophy lived, not preached. And here's the quiet secret. Almost nobody notices this on purpose. They mistake loudness for authority, extroversion for influence, popularity for respect. Yet influence is quiet. It is almost invisible until you witness it. And this is why most people never realize why they are rejected repeatedly. Because influence isn't manufactured. It is grown silently, habit by habit, choice by choice, day after day. Think about it. How many mornings do you wake up reacting to emails, notifications, and social media rather than leading your mind deliberately? Every distraction chips away at your presence, at your internal alignment, at the very aura that could make you unignorable. In contrast, those who move through life with magnetic authority understand a principle so simple that it almost feels like cheating. They master themselves first, before seeking to master perception. And yet this mastery is not about perfection. It is about awareness,
subtlety, and control. The quiet shaping of your responses, habits, and energy in ways that others instinctively respect and trust. This is where the Stoics become your mentors. Marcus Aurelius did not write for applause or admiration. He wrote for the disciplined shaping of the mind. Seneca did not promise popularity. He promised resilience and internal authority. And when you cultivate this same alignment, something remarkable happens. People begin to respond differently. Doors open, conversations linger, ideas are heard, invitations arrive. And all the while, you are not performing, manipulating, or striving for approval. You are simply, invisibly, becoming someone impossible to ignore, even though the true habits that create this will remain hidden until we reach the very end of this journey. But for now, the key is to notice the invisible patterns around you, to see the difference between those who are noticed and those who are ignored, and to begin asking yourself, what am I unconsciously broadcasting to the world? What part of me repels attention? What part draws it naturally, without effort? In the following moments, we will dive deeper into these invisible forces, layer by layer, revealing lessons the Stoics mastered, lessons modern psychology confirms, and lessons you can begin applying immediately, all without ever forcing yourself to be seen. The question is not whether influence is possible for you, it is whether you are ready to see yourself as others see you, and to start walking a path that feels uncomfortable now, but will make rejection almost impossible in the future. And remember, the most powerful transformations are always subtle at first, almost invisible, until one day the world cannot help but notice.
Have you ever noticed how some people seem to glide through life, doors opening for them effortlessly, opportunities appearing as if by fate, while others struggle, trying harder and harder, yet constantly encountering resistance? It is a phenomenon that baffles the mind and frustrates the soul, and yet the answer is not hidden in luck or external circumstances. It lies in patterns invisible to the untrained eye, patterns of thought, emotion, and subtle behavior that shape how the world reacts to us. Take the story of Epictetus, once a slave, now remembered as one of the most revered Stoic philosophers. He could have hated the world, envied the free, or surrendered to bitterness. Instead, he learned the secret most people overlook. It is not circumstances that determine your life, but your mastery over them. No man is free, he said, who is not master of himself. Now consider how this applies to modern life. Every day we are bombarded with stimuli designed to provoke reaction. Emails that demand immediate response, social media that hijacks our attention, workplaces that reward urgency over depth. Most people react, and in doing so, broadcast a subtle energy of desperation, imbalance, and incompleteness. Neuroscience confirms this. Our brains are wired to detect inconsistencies between what people project and what they truly feel. If your inner life is scattered, reactive, or misaligned, others sense it instantly, even if they cannot articulate why. But here's the remarkable part. This invisible force is malleable. By cultivating discipline, emotional regulation, and intentional thought, you can become someone whose presence elicits trust and attention naturally. Consider the simple act of listening deeply. In a world obsessed with self-promotion, the ability to truly hear another person is revolutionary. Seneca wrote in his letters, "Most powerful is he who has himself under control." Listening is not merely hearing words, it is a reflection of inner stability, patience, and self-command. And when people encounter this, they cannot help but respect it. They are drawn in, not because you seek to impress them, but because they sense your composure, your integrity, your alignment. Let me take you further into the human element. Imagine a colleague at work, brilliant, talented, and full of ideas. Yet every suggestion is dismissed, every contribution minimized. Meanwhile, another person, perhaps quieter, less overtly capable, finds that the same ideas are embraced, the same projects endorsed. Why? It is not skill alone. It is presence, perception, and the subtle mastery of reactions. This is where the Stoics and modern psychology intersect beautifully. Research in social cognition shows that humans respond to signals of reliability, calmness, and self-control more than they respond to overt competence or charm. We are drawn to people whose internal states exude stability, not chaos, whose actions match their values, whose words are measured, not frantic. Marcus Aurelius himself faced constant political pressure, betrayal, and uncertainty. Yet he wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Even in chaos, his alignment created an aura of authority and trust. And here lies the paradox. The more you try to force influence, the more the world resists. The more you chase approval, the more rejection finds you. But when you cultivate your inner life with deliberate, disciplined attention, when you align your thoughts, emotions, and actions, influence emerges effortlessly. People begin to respond to you differently, doors begin to open, and opportunities arise. Yet almost nobody teaches this because it is invisible, quiet, and requires patience. This is why most attempts at self-improvement fail. People chase the wrong things: popularity, recognition, and validation. They mimic behaviors without cultivating the underlying stability. And it is precisely this invisible mastery, the subtle Stoic alignment of mind and action, that transforms rejection into natural attraction. Over the next few moments, we will explore stories, lessons, and insights that reveal how this transformation occurs. You will witness the interplay of ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience, the quiet forces shaping influence, and the subtle decisions that determine whether you are ignored or impossible to reject. But before we get to the tangible habits themselves, you must first understand the framework, the internal scaffolding that makes these habits so potent. Without it, even the most effective actions will fall flat. And this is why patience is essential. The world is constantly teaching, constantly observing, and constantly responding to the signals you project. Every choice, every reaction, every fleeting emotion sends a message, whether you intend it or not. Understanding this invisible language is the key to stepping into a presence that commands attention effortlessly. And though we are not yet revealing the habits themselves, already you can see the foundation forming. You begin to realize why some people are always heard, always respected, always trusted, while others struggle to leave even a trace. And the truth is, this foundation is accessible to anyone willing to notice, to practice, and to align themselves with principles far older than modern self-help, principles that, when mastered, can make you impossible to reject.
There is a quiet tragedy in the lives of those who are constantly overlooked. They walk through the world as if wearing invisible chains, trying desperately to be noticed, to matter, to belong. And yet, every effort seems to bounce off an unseen barrier. Think of the young professional in a crowded office, full of talent and ideas, yet repeatedly passed over for opportunities. Every rejection chips away at confidence. Every dismissive glance reinforces a sense of invisibility. In these moments, the mind begins to internalize defeat. You might recognize it yourself, that sinking feeling when an email goes unanswered, when a comment is ignored, or when your contributions are minimized. Modern psychology calls it social rejection sensitivity, and it is a natural evolutionary response. Humans are wired to seek acceptance, to avoid ostracism. But the Stoics offer a radically different lens. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. At first, this may seem cold or abstract, but the essence is profound. Our response, not the external event, determines our reality. Those who are rejected repeatedly often fail to recognize the invisible patterns that invite dismissal. Their energy, their reactions, their unexamined habits all broadcast subtle signals that the world unconsciously picks up. And yet, the truth is liberating. Influence, respect, and attention are not given arbitrarily. They are responses to internal mastery, to alignment, to presence that cannot be faked. Consider the story of Seneca's friend Lucilius, who struggled with the same frustration. He felt invisible in Rome's elite circles, constantly overshadowed despite his intellect. Seneca's advice was simple yet radical. Guard yourself against the habits of the world, and you will find your place. In other words, the problem was never external. The problem was the unintentional habits, emotional responses, and misaligned behaviors that repelled the very attention Lucilius sought. And here's where modern neuroscience reinforces this ancient wisdom. Humans detect subtle cues, posture, eye contact, tone, patience, composure, in milliseconds. Our brains unconsciously assess consistency, authenticity, and emotional regulation. If the signals are weak, inconsistent, or reactive, people withdraw. If they are steady, aligned, and composed, people gravitate naturally. This is why some individuals command rooms without saying a word, while others, equally capable, are ignored. And yet the path to this kind of magnetic presence is not about manipulation or charm. It is not about reading scripts or following tricks. It is about deliberate cultivation of habits that strengthen the mind, regulate emotions, and align actions with values. Imagine the small decisions you make daily, whether you respond immediately to irritation, whether you chase validation, whether you allow fear to dictate your words. Each of these choices shapes your invisible aura. The cumulative effect is staggering. Over months, years, decades, it determines whether you are overlooked or impossible to reject. Now, let's take it closer to home. How often do you notice yourself reacting automatically, letting your emotions dictate your interactions, responding to minor slights or discomforts with disproportionate energy? Every unexamined reaction chips away at your magnetic presence. Every uncontrolled impulse creates tiny cracks in the invisible authority that others perceive. And this is precisely why the majority of people, despite good intentions, are repeatedly ignored, dismissed, or undervalued. But here's the subtle twist that few recognize. The Stoics teach that the solution is already within you. Epictetus writes, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." Your internal mastery, your ability to regulate your emotions, shape your perception, and act with deliberate purpose is the lever that shifts the world's response. And while the specific habits that amplify this mastery will remain hidden until the final revelation, you are already beginning to sense the pattern. Influence is not about external approval. It is about internal alignment. Respect is not about performance. It is about presence. And the more you begin to notice your invisible habits, the small, seemingly inconsequential ways you react, respond, and engage, the more you will see why some people are effortlessly trusted and embraced, while others struggle to leave a mark. Already you are stepping into a perspective that feels counterintuitive yet powerful. Rejection is rarely a measure of worth. It is a reflection of patterns you can shape, habits you can cultivate, and presence you can command. And as we move forward, layer by layer, story by story, insight by insight, the invisible blueprint for becoming impossible to reject is slowly emerging, though the exact habits remain just out of reach, heightening your curiosity and compelling you to keep watching until the very end.
Consider the last time you felt completely out of place, a gathering where laughter seemed to flow around you, invitations were extended without thought to your presence, and your ideas, no matter how insightful, were brushed aside. The sting isn't just social, it is biological. Our brains interpret rejection as pain, triggering stress responses, lowering confidence, and making each subsequent interaction heavier, more fraught, more anxious. Modern psychology calls this the rejection cascade, where a single overlooked moment amplifies into a pattern of self-doubt, insecurity, and withdrawal. And yet,
The Stoics teach a profoundly different approach. Seneca, in his letters, writes, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Rejection, he implies, is often a projection of our own fears, amplified and misinterpreted. The real power comes when we observe the moment dispassionately, examine the patterns behind it, and respond with deliberate intention rather than instinctive reaction. Think of it this way. The world does not hand out influence like a prize. Influence is earned invisibly, silently, and cumulatively. It is the sum of countless small choices, moments, and reactions, each one building or eroding your presence. And most people, unconsciously, chip away at their own influence with impulsive words, unchecked emotions, and inconsistent behaviors. You may have experienced this without realizing it. Perhaps you've said something in irritation, acted in haste, or sought approval where none was required. Each of these moments broadcasts a subtle energy that others perceive instantly. Here's the fascinating part. Humans are wired to detect congruence between internal states and external behavior. Mirror neurons fire when observing authenticity. Subtle cues of composure, calmness, and self-mastery trigger trust and attraction. Conversely, signs of internal chaos, desperation, or imbalance trigger avoidance. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth every day amidst the chaos of empire, betrayal, and the unending demands of leadership. Yet, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Even centuries later, neuroscience validates this Stoic wisdom. Emotional regulation, presence, and congruence literally shape how others respond to you. The question is, how do you cultivate this magnetic presence when the world constantly tests you? When emails arrive like arrows, colleagues pressure you, family tensions simmer, and social media constantly broadcasts comparison? The answer, as the Stoics hint and modern psychology confirms, is that the solution is internal first, habitual second, and external last. It begins with awareness, noticing the impulses, reactions, and tiny behavioral patterns that invite rejection or diminish influence. It is a quiet, invisible process, invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to those who encounter it. Imagine if every interaction you had, every glance exchanged, every word spoken subtly communicated composure, trustworthiness, and integrity. How would that change the way people perceive you? How would it change the doors that open, the ideas that are heard, the respect that is granted? Already, you can sense that influence is less about what you say or do and more about who you are when you say or do it. And this is precisely why most people fail. They try to manufacture influence externally, mimicking charisma or adopting superficial behaviors without mastering the internal foundations that make these behaviors effective. This is the hidden architecture of influence, a structure built over time with careful attention, reflection, and alignment of thought, emotion, and action. And while we are not yet revealing the exact habits that bring this architecture to life, each insight, each example, each reflection you encounter now is quietly preparing the groundwork. You are beginning to recognize patterns you never noticed before. Why some people are heard when they speak and others are ignored. Why some are trusted instantly and others must prove themselves endlessly. The invisible rules are being revealed layer by layer, and the moment you finally understand the habits behind them, the ones that make a person impossible to reject, will feel like a culmination of everything you've sensed but never fully articulated. Until then, Pay attention to the subtle lessons hidden in rejection, the quiet wisdom of the Stoics, and the neurological truths that shape human perception. They are the stepping stones toward a presence so magnetic, so aligned, that the world cannot help but respond. And as we move deeper into this journey, you will encounter more stories, more psychological insights, and more reflections that will stretch your understanding, challenge your assumptions, and continue to build curiosity, the kind that keeps you watching, thinking, and anticipating the final revelation. Imagine a young entrepreneur standing in front of a room full of investors. Her hands shake slightly, her voice wavers, and she senses the doubt radiating from the audience. In that moment, most people would crumble under the pressure, feeling every glance, every unspoken judgment as a personal indictment. Yet there is a remarkable way to navigate this kind of high-stakes situation, a way that does not rely on theatrics, charm, or persuasion tactics. It begins with mastery over yourself, over your thoughts, your emotions, your inner reactions. This is exactly what the Stoics mastered. Epictetus, once a slave and later a philosopher, endured hardships that would crush most people: beatings, humiliation, deprivation. And yet he emerged as a figure whose teachings still command respect centuries later. He recognized a fundamental truth: external circumstances cannot control you, but your mind can. And in modern terms, this aligns perfectly with research in emotional intelligence and cognitive control. The ability to regulate your emotions under pressure, to remain composed and deliberate, literally changes how people perceive you. They respond not to what you fear or hope for, but to the steadiness, confidence, and integrity that radiate from your control. Consider the entrepreneur again. She takes a breath, steadies her posture, and responds to questions not defensively, but thoughtfully, reflecting not only her knowledge, but the alignment of her mind with her purpose. Suddenly, skepticism melts into curiosity. Dismissal turns into engagement. What changed? Not her pitch, not her slides, not her ideas. What changed was her presence, the quiet, controlled, deliberate energy she projected under pressure. This is the essence of influence that the Stoics practiced and psychologists now measure. Micro habits of thought and behavior that shape perception, subtly but powerfully. Marcus Aurelius advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength, though internal, manifests externally. It is visible in the way others lean in the weight your words carry, in the trust and attention you command without effort. And yet the majority of people never reach this level because they misunderstand what influence requires. They chase visibility, applause, and validation instead of cultivating inner alignment. They focus on outcomes rather than process, external markers rather than internal mastery. But here is the subtle power of the Stoic approach. Influence is not a performance. It is the natural result of living in alignment with principles that guide thought, behavior, and reaction. When the mind is disciplined, emotions are regulated, and actions are deliberate, the world responds instinctively, even unconsciously. You don't have to convince anyone. They simply notice, they simply respond, and doors open without effort. And this is where the journey becomes exciting. Because what we are exploring is not hypothetical. There are countless examples, leaders, thinkers, innovators, who achieved what seems like charisma or magnetism not by force, not by luck, but through deliberate mastery of themselves. Their habits were invisible to outsiders, yet the effect was unmistakable. People trusted them, listened to them, sought them out, and followed their lead. And here's where the curiosity deepens. These transformations do not require extraordinary circumstances. You don't need a room full of investors or a public stage. The same principles apply to everyday life: conversations, emails, meetings, family interactions, friendships. The subtle mastery that commands attention, trust, and respect can be cultivated daily, quietly, incrementally, through choices most people ignore. And while the exact habits that produce this effect remain a secret for now, you are already starting to see the pattern. It's about preparation over reaction, discipline over impulse, presence over performance. Each insight, each reflection, each pause of awareness is building a foundation for the final revelation. By the time we reach it, the habits that make a person impossible to reject will feel inevitable, logical, and utterly transformative. A culmination of everything you've been observing and understanding along the way. But until then, notice the invisible forces shaping interactions around you. Notice who commands attention effortlessly and why. And notice yourself in comparison. The lessons are already seeping in. Rejection is rarely about your abilities. Influence is rarely about your effort. What truly matters is alignment, composure, and mastery of the self. A framework that will soon give birth to the habits themselves, which have the power to change not just how people respond to you, but how you respond to life itself.
Let's step into a scene that might feel familiar. You wake up to the relentless ping of notifications, the pressure of unfinished tasks, and the invisible weight of expectations pressing down before your day even begins. Most people respond automatically, scrolling, reacting, worrying, letting external chaos shape their inner state. But imagine, for a moment, what would happen if instead of reacting, you paused, observed, and directed your mind deliberately. This is the difference between being influenced by life and influencing it. Seneca once wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." It's easy to read that and nod, but the challenge is living it in the small, invisible moments. The subtle mastery of your reactions, the quiet command over impulses, and the alignment of thought and action are the foundations upon which influence is built. Think of the countless interactions you have each day: an offhand comment from a colleague, a challenging email, a misinterpreted text. Each one carries the potential to trigger frustration, defensiveness, or distraction. The habitual reaction of most people is to respond immediately, emotionally, or out of fear. Yet, it is precisely in these moments of micro-choice that the invisible architecture of your presence is constructed. You are either reinforcing patterns that repel attention and respect, or you are quietly building an internal authority that draws others naturally. Marcus Aurelius, facing the constant pressures of an empire, reminds us the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every irritation, every slight, every moment of potential rejection is a training ground, an opportunity to cultivate the calm, deliberate composure that people unconsciously sense and respect. Modern psychology confirms this. Consistent emotional regulation and micro-habits of thought produce measurable effects on how others perceive trustworthiness, competence, and influence. Imagine practicing these principles quietly in your daily life, responding to stress with deliberate calm, choosing words carefully, observing reactions without immediate judgment, and aligning actions with values rather than impulses. Over time, these small acts accumulate into a powerful, almost magnetic presence. The subtle irony is that those who become impossible to reject do not act to impress others. They act with integrity, consistency, and intentionality. Qualities that cannot be faked and that people unconsciously recognize. And yet, almost nobody realizes that the secret to influence is invisible. They chase visibility, popularity, and admiration, expending energy on outcomes rather than cultivating the internal mastery that produces lasting results. Think of your own moments of frustration or disappointment, the times you felt overlooked, dismissed, or undervalued. What if, instead of reacting emotionally, you treated those experiences as the Stoics did, as exercises, as opportunities to practice patience, self-control, and deliberate response? Imagine if each slight, each rejection, each moment of perceived failure became a chance to refine your inner authority rather than weaken it. Already, you are beginning to sense the invisible mechanics at work.
The world is constantly signaling to you how it responds to presence, composure, and alignment. Each reaction, each word, each pause carries weight. And the quiet truth is this: people are drawn to those who embody these qualities naturally, almost effortlessly, and repel those who do not. We are moving toward the moment where the invisible patterns crystallize into concrete habits, the very habits that make a person impossible to reject. But before revealing them, it is essential to understand the foundation. Influence is not manufactured externally, it is grown internally, habit by habit, choice by choice. Every instance of deliberate composure, every measured response, every alignment of thought and action is laying the groundwork for the magnetic presence that the habits will amplify. By observing, reflecting, and applying these principles, you are already stepping onto a path that transforms not only how others respond to you, but how you navigate the world itself. The anticipation builds because the habits we are approaching are not superficial tricks. They are distilled, practical applications of Stoic wisdom combined with modern psychology. Principles that, when applied, reshape your presence, your interactions, and ultimately, your life. And the closer we get to them, the more you realize that everything you've been sensing, observing, and practicing is a prelude, a preparation, a subtle awakening to the habits that will soon be revealed.
By now, you've likely begun noticing patterns in your own life, the invisible forces that shape how people respond to you, the subtle signals you broadcast, and the quiet choices that either attract or repel attention. Perhaps you felt a flicker of recognition, a memory of a time when someone's composure, patience, or integrity made you instinctively respect them, even before they said a word. Or maybe you've realized how small missteps, rushed reactions, or unexamined impulses have cost you opportunities, connections, or trust. These observations are not coincidences. They are the beginning of a framework, a blueprint that the Stoics understood centuries ago, and that modern neuroscience confirms with startling clarity. Epictetus teaches, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. The implication is profound. Influence, respect, and presence are not external gifts. They are the result of internal alignment and deliberate action. And yet, here's where the tension rises. Most people stumble precisely because they want the outcomes, attention, recognition, acceptance, without first cultivating the internal conditions that produce them. They chase influence externally, mimicking behaviors, performing in ways that are hollow, desperate, or incongruent with who they truly are. And the world senses this immediately. You've seen it happen, someone trying too hard to impress, overcompensating, over-explaining, or reacting impulsively, only to find the response is indifference or dismissal. Meanwhile, someone else, quiet and deliberate, with no apparent effort, draws attention, trust, and respect effortlessly. It seems unfair, almost magical. But the secret is not magic, it is invisible mastery, a set of deliberate, practiced patterns that govern thought, emotion, and action, applied consistently until they become a natural extension of the self. Now, I can sense your curiosity rising. You're asking yourself, what exactly are these patterns? What habits produce this kind of unshakable presence, this magnetic influence that makes rejection nearly impossible? And the truth is, the answer is coming. But first, you must appreciate the invisible scaffolding upon which these habits are built. It is not enough to learn a list of actions. The real transformation occurs when these actions are aligned with discipline, emotional regulation, and deliberate attention. The very principles that Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus lived and taught. To give you a glimpse without revealing too much, consider this. The individuals who become impossible to reject share an uncanny ability to remain composed under pressure, to see opportunities where others see obstacles, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and to cultivate trust without effort. These are not superficial tricks. They are the manifestation of internal habits, practiced consistently until they shape the perception of everyone around them. And here's the final tease before we move deeper.
While you may have tried to adopt strategies to improve how others perceive you, none of them work without the internal mastery we've been exploring. Without the invisible foundation, any external attempt at influence will be fragile, inconsistent, and easily disrupted. But as we move forward, paragraph by paragraph, story by story, insight by insight, the blueprint will begin to crystallize. The moment the first habit is revealed, you'll realize that everything you've been experiencing, noticing, and reflecting on has been preparing you to absorb it fully, to recognize its power, its subtlety, and its potential to transform how the world perceives you. And the anticipation is not just a narrative device, it mirrors real life. Because these habits, when practiced, feel almost effortless. They create a sense of inevitability in interactions, a natural authority that commands attention without seeking it. And now, having laid this groundwork, we are ready to begin the slow unveiling, each revelation more powerful than the last, each one building on the invisible architecture we've explored so far. But be warned, the journey requires attention, reflection, and patience. The transformation will feel subtle at first, almost imperceptible, yet its effects will accumulate until you become someone impossible to reject, not through force, not through charm, but through deliberate alignment of mind, body, and action. By the next paragraph, the journey begins in earnest. The first piece of this transformation, the first habit, will start to emerge, but only gradually, so that each moment of revelation stretches curiosity, anticipation, and understanding to the very end.
Now, the moment you've been waiting for begins. The first subtle shift that sets some people apart from the crowd. The invisible difference that makes rejection less likely and connection more natural. But here's the catch. It is not flashy. It does not involve charm, persuasion, or speaking louder than everyone else. It begins within, in how you handle the small, often overlooked moments of life. The first habit is about mastery of your own mind, controlling your reactions, observing your impulses, and responding deliberately rather than automatically. Epictetus said it most plainly, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Consider the modern world. An offhand criticism in a meeting, a text that could be interpreted as hostile, an unexpected inconvenience. Most people respond immediately, with defensiveness, anxiety, or irritation. That reaction signals something powerful to others: unpredictability, instability, or neediness. And the world notices even when you think it doesn't. The magnetic individual, in contrast, treats these moments differently. They pause, reflect, and respond with measured composure. Their emotional equilibrium becomes their superpower. Neuroscience supports this. Studies show that self-regulation and delayed reaction enhance perceived trustworthiness, leadership, and charisma. In other words, mastering your own mind is not just philosophical, it is neurological. Let's make it tangible. Imagine receiving harsh criticism at work. Your first instinct might be to argue, defend, or withdraw. The habitual response for most is reactionary. But if you employ this first habit, a deliberate pause, assessment, and thoughtful response, the energy shifts. You communicate confidence without words, authority without assertion, and composure without effort. People notice, they trust, doors begin to open. Marcus Aurelius faced this challenge constantly. Political rivals, betrayal, and chaos surrounded him daily, yet his writing repeatedly emphasizes control of the mind. You have power over your mind, not outside events. That internal control translated into external influence, trust, and attention that could not be commanded through force. And this is why the first habit is foundational. Without it, no other habit can fully take effect. Your inner stability becomes the lens through which the world interprets every action, every word, every presence. And here's where curiosity deepens. The next habits build upon this foundation, each one enhancing influence, attention, and respect in ways that feel almost effortless. But the first step is always internal. Without mastering your mind, external strategies, networking, persuasion, charisma hacks are like building a house on sand.
The subtlety, however, is what makes it so powerful. People are drawn to calm, deliberate, and composed energy without even realizing why. It is quiet, invisible, and almost magical, yet entirely accessible. And remember, this is only the beginning. While the other habits remain hidden for now, each one will compound with this internal mastery, creating layers of presence, authority, and unshakable influence. Already you can start practicing it in your life. Notice your impulses, pause before reacting, and respond deliberately. Even small moments of self-control accumulate into an invisible force that the world perceives instinctively. By the time all habits are revealed, you will understand why the Stoics emphasized internal mastery above all else, because it is the first, foundational, and most powerful habit that makes a person impossible to reject.
With your mind under deliberate control, you now have the foundation to cultivate the second habit, the one that transforms mere presence into an almost magnetic authority. This habit is about intentional action and consistency, the quiet demonstration of reliability that others notice subconsciously. Imagine a friend, colleague, or mentor who always follows through. Their words align with their deeds, their promises are honored, their actions are predictable in the most reassuring way. You don't question them, you trust them. Seneca emphasized this principle in his letters. What is a good man but one who maintains his character consistently, without being swayed by chance or opinion? It is not about flamboyant gestures or flashy accomplishments. It is about showing up consistently, day after day, in alignment with values, purpose, and intention. Consider the psychological impact. Humans are wired to detect patterns, reliability, and trustworthiness. Our brains unconsciously scan for consistency in behavior, weighing it more heavily than charisma, eloquence, or status. When someone demonstrates reliable alignment of action and word, it generates an almost imperceptible magnetism. People feel safe around them, drawn to them, and more willing to listen, collaborate, and invest in their presence. Contrast this with inconsistency. Missed deadlines, broken promises, unpredictable reactions. Even if a person is brilliant or charming, their inconsistent behavior subtly repels others. The second habit, then, is about embedding reliability and deliberate action into your daily life. Marcus Aurelius himself modeled this principle not through grand speeches, but through disciplined practice and measured decision-making. Every action reflected intention, every duty completed with purpose. In modern terms, this habit is a psychological lever. It triggers trust, rapport, and respect without any effort to manipulate others. It is invisible, yet immensely powerful. Now here's where the storytelling deepens. Think of a workplace scenario. Two colleagues present equally strong ideas, but only one consistently follows through on commitments, communicates clearly, and delivers results without drama. Who earns attention, trust, and influence? The answer is almost instinctive. It is not talent alone, it is habitual consistency that signals competence, control, and presence. And here lies the subtle genius of Stoicism. The outer results, the attention, influence, or respect, are byproducts of inner discipline, not objectives in themselves. This habit is deceptively simple, but extraordinarily rare. Most people talk about reliability, plan for results, or attempt to create impression through appearance. But they neglect the quiet daily cultivation of consistency, the subtle habit that makes you someone others instinctively depend on and gravitate toward. And notice the layering. This habit builds directly on the first. Without self-mastery and control over reactions, consistency is fragile. A single uncontrolled emotional outburst, impulsive reaction, or moment of frustration undermines the invisible authority you are building. But with internal control established, the second habit compounds your influence. It is the silent signal to the world, I am steady, I am dependable, you can trust me. Already you can begin integrating it into small daily actions, completing commitments, showing up reliably, aligning words with deeds, and noticing the subtle effects on how others respond.
And remember, this is only the second of 4 habits. Each one adds a layer of presence, influence, and authority, stretching curiosity and anticipation for what comes next. By now, you can sense the emerging pattern. These habits are not tricks or superficial strategies. They are the visible expressions of an invisible architecture, a way of being that makes rejection increasingly difficult, almost impossible. And the next habit, building on these first 2, takes the subtlety even further, enhancing the magnetic pull you exert on the people, opportunities, and spaces around you.
Now that your mind is under deliberate control and your actions are consistent, it's time to layer in the third habit, the subtle yet transformative force that turns influence into genuine connection. This habit is about empathy and understanding others without losing yourself. The quiet mastery of reading people, anticipating needs, and responding in ways that make others feel recognized and valued. Epictetus often emphasized the importance of perspective. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. The third habit is a practical application of this ancient wisdom. Imagine a scenario. A team member approaches you with a complaint, a friend seeks advice, or a stranger shares a concern. Most people respond reflexively, defensively, dismissively, or with self-centered advice. The effect is subtle but powerful. It distances others, creating invisible barriers that repel connection. Now, consider someone practicing this third habit. They listen attentively, reflect thoughtfully, and respond with genuine understanding, all while maintaining their composure and boundaries. The effect is magnetic. People feel seen, heard, and respected, and unconsciously they are drawn to that presence repeatedly. Neuroscience supports this principle. Empathetic engagement activates reward centers in the brain of the other person, reinforcing trust, attraction, and cooperation. This is why leaders, mentors, and influencers who master this habit inspire loyalty effortlessly, not through force or persuasion, but through presence, attentiveness, and subtle responsiveness. Seneca observed, "Treat your inferior as you would your superior, for they are equal in the eyes of virtue." Applied practically, this habit creates an aura of respect, fairness, and thoughtful consideration, making rejection less likely because people feel valued in your presence. And here's the nuanced beauty of it. This habit does not compromise your internal mastery, habit 1, or your consistency, habit 2. Instead, it amplifies them. The controlled mind ensures your reactions are measured. Consistency signals reliability, and empathy transforms interactions into meaningful connections. Together, the 3 habits begin to create an almost invisible gravitational field. Others sense it instinctively. Invitations are extended, trust is granted, ideas are received warmly, and doors that once felt closed open without effort. But here's where curiosity heightens. The third habit is only 1 step away from the final piece, the fourth habit, the subtle capstone that, when combined with the first 3, makes rejection nearly impossible. This is where the Stoics' wisdom truly intersects with modern psychology. Influence, they show us, is not about dominating, impressing, or performing. It is about aligning mind, behavior, and social intuition in ways that feel effortless, yet are deliberate. The third habit is about social mastery, an awareness that transcends words, appearances, or superficial strategies. And though we are still holding back the final habit, the anticipation is purposeful. You can already sense the invisible threads of influence taking shape: internal control, consistent action, and empathetic connection. Each habit compounds the previous one, building layers of presence that are almost tangible, even though invisible. And as you reflect on your own life, consider this. How often have you ignored subtle cues, missed opportunities to connect, or reacted impulsively? Each moment is a chance to integrate this habit, to observe, to respond, and to draw others in naturally. The final habit, the one that completes this framework and cements your unshakable presence, will reveal the last piece of this invisible architecture. And when it does, you will see why rejection becomes increasingly rare, and why influence and respect flow not from force, but from alignment, consistency, and subtle mastery.
By now, you've cultivated internal mastery, demonstrated consistent reliability, and refined empathetic connection. You can feel the invisible patterns of influence forming around you. People notice, doors open, and opportunities appear in ways that feel almost effortless. Yet even with these three habits, there is one final element that completes the transformation: the subtle force that elevates someone from respected to impossible to reject. The Stoics understood this deeply, though they rarely articulated it as a habit, because it transcends simple action. It is a state of being. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." The implication is profound. The final habit is about embodying your values so fully, so visibly in your demeanor and decisions that the world responds before you even speak. Imagine a leader, a friend, or a mentor whose every gesture communicates integrity, courage, and unwavering purpose. You don't have to convince anyone. Their presence alone commands trust and attention. Psychologists today describe this as the halo effect on steroids, not superficial charm, but authentic alignment between values, words, and actions. Humans unconsciously detect integrity, and when it is consistent and visible, rejection becomes almost impossible. Consider a scenario from daily life: a difficult negotiation, a tense family discussion, or a challenging conversation at work. Most people react with fear, manipulation, or insecurity, broadcasting signals that weaken influence. The individual who has mastered the fourth habit navigates these moments differently. Their words, tone, body language, and decisions reflect the clarity of their values and the depth of their discipline. People sense it. They respond differently. Doors open. Trust is given. Ideas are received without skepticism. And here's the crucial insight: this final habit does not exist in isolation. It amplifies the first three. Internal mastery ensures calmness under pressure. Consistency ensures reliability and credibility. Empathy ensures connection and resonance. And the fourth habit transforms all of these into an almost gravitational presence, one that makes others want to listen, collaborate, and include you naturally. You may be wondering what this habit feels like in practice. The answer is deceptively simple. It is the deliberate embodiment of virtue, principle, and purpose in every interaction. Zeno of Citium emphasized that a good life is one lived according to nature and reason. The same principle applies here. When your inner values shine outward through aligned behavior, your presence communicates authenticity that cannot be ignored. The curiosity intensifies because this final habit is what separates those who are occasionally respected from those who become impossible to reject. You have already begun noticing the effects of the first three habits. This one crystallizes them. It is the culmination of centuries of Stoic wisdom, modern psychological insight, and subtle social dynamics. And though the exact practice will be revealed in the next paragraph, the anticipation is purposeful. By now, you are primed to understand not just the mechanics of influence, but the philosophy, the psychology, and the ethics that underpin it. You are ready for the final layer, the keystone habit that completes the architecture we have been building from the very beginning, making rejection a rare occurrence and influence a natural byproduct of who you are. All that remains is the final revelation, the moment where everything comes together, where curiosity is rewarded, and where the four habits that make a person impossible to reject are fully revealed and explained in practical and applicable terms. As we near the culmination of this journey,
take a moment to reflect on what you've absorbed so far. You've explored the invisible forces that shape perception, the subtle interplay between internal mastery and external influence, and the profound wisdom of the Stoics applied to the modern world. You've seen how control over your mind allows you to respond deliberately rather than react impulsively. You've understood that consistency transforms promises into credibility, that empathy deepens connection, and that every small choice contributes to the invisible architecture of your presence. Yet even now, the final keystone remains just out of reach, the fourth habit that fuses all the preceding insights into a unified magnetic force. Think of it like constructing a bridge. The first three habits are the supports, the pillars, the foundation. Without the final keystone, the structure stands but lacks the elegance, completeness, and strength that make it unshakable. And here is the brilliance of Stoicism. Mastery, presence, and influence are not about force, tricks, or manipulation. They are about alignment. Alignment of thought, action, emotion, and principle. When this alignment is fully realized, the world begins to respond naturally. Invitations are extended, ideas are heard, trust is granted, and rejection becomes increasingly rare. Consider your own life, the small moments of emotional reactivity, the times you felt overlooked, the subtle signals you've broadcast without realizing it. Each one of these was an opportunity to practice the first three habits, the quiet, often invisible behaviors that accumulate into influence. And now, as you stand on the cusp of the final revelation, you begin to sense something extraordinary, that the culmination of these habits is not a gimmick or a secret formula, it is a way of being. It is the alignment of mind, behavior, and values so complete that your presence communicates authority, integrity, and magnetic appeal before you even speak. The anticipation is deliberate. The suspense is necessary, because the fourth habit, the final keystone, is not merely a tactic. It is a synthesis of centuries of wisdom, human psychology, and subtle social dynamics. It is what transforms influence from a skill into a natural extension of who you are. And as you prepare for the final paragraph, ask yourself, are you ready to embody these four habits fully? Are you prepared to integrate internal mastery, consistency, empathy, and this final keystone into a life where rejection is not a reflection of inadequacy, but a rarity in the presence of alignment? The answer, when revealed, will make everything you've observed, reflected upon, and begun practicing fall into place. The anticipation you feel now is the same anticipation that fuels transformation. The readiness to step into a version of yourself that commands respect, attention, and trust effortlessly. And in the next paragraph, every open loop, every moment of curiosity, every piece of insight will converge. The four habits that make a person impossible to reject will be fully revealed, explained, and positioned for immediate application, completing the journey from invisible patterns to tangible, life-altering presence.
Here it is, the culmination of everything we've explored. The four habits that, when fully embraced, make a person impossible to reject. Each one builds on the previous, forming a seamless architecture of presence, influence, and trust. Habit 1. Master your mind. This is the foundation. Internal mastery means controlling your thoughts, emotions, and impulses. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." By observing your reactions, pausing before responding, and choosing deliberate action, you maintain composure under any circumstance. Whether facing criticism, conflict, or social pressure, your emotional stability signals confidence and control, the subtle energy that others detect and respect. Neuroscience confirms it.
Emotional regulation influences perception, builds trust, and triggers unconscious attraction. This habit ensures your presence is steady, consistent, and magnetic. Habit 2. Practice consistent action. The second habit transforms trust into credibility. Consistency in words and deeds signals reliability, integrity, and dependability. Seneca wrote, "What is a good man but one who maintains his character consistently without being swayed by chance or opinion?" Following through on commitments, showing up on time, and delivering on promises creates invisible authority. People instinctively gravitate toward those whose actions align with their words. This habit compounds the effects of emotional mastery. It assures others that your calmness is backed by reliability, reinforcing influence in every interaction. Habit 3. Cultivate empathy and connection. The third habit is social mastery. Listening actively, understanding perspectives, and responding thoughtfully fosters trust and deepens connections. Epictetus' advice to listen twice as much as you speak is the core principle here. By valuing others' thoughts and emotions while maintaining your boundaries, you create subtle magnetic energy that draws people in. Neuroscience shows that empathetic engagement activates reward pathways in the brain of the listener, building unconscious loyalty and respect. This habit turns your presence from merely steady and reliable to warmly compelling, making people want to include and follow you naturally. Habit 4. Embody integrity and purpose. The final habit is the keystone, the culmination of the first three. It is about aligning your life, words, and actions with your deepest values so completely that your presence communicates authority, authenticity, and trust without effort. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." Embodying integrity signals to the world that you are someone dependable, principled, and aligned. Impossible to reject because your character resonates so clearly. This habit amplifies the others. Emotional mastery ensures calmness, consistency ensures credibility, empathy ensures connection, and integrity ensures that your presence is unmistakable and magnetic. Together, these four habits form an invisible architecture of influence: mind mastery, consistent action, empathetic connection, and embodied integrity. They are not manipulative tricks or fleeting tactics, they are deliberate ways of being, cultivated through practice, reflection, and alignment. Begin integrating them today. Pause before reacting, honor your commitments, listen and empathize deeply, and live according to your principles. Over time, these habits compound, shaping how people perceive, trust, and respond to you, making rejection increasingly rare and influence nearly inevitable. The Stoics understood this centuries ago, and modern psychology confirms it today. Your presence is created, maintained, and perceived through invisible patterns that can be mastered. By applying these four habits, you step into a version of yourself that commands respect, inspires loyalty, and attracts opportunities effortlessly. You become impossible to reject, not because you demand it, but because your alignment, consistency, empathy, and integrity radiate naturally. And in that realization lies true freedom, the freedom to interact, influence, and thrive in the world, grounded in your own mastery rather than the fickle opinions of others. Now the journey is complete. The patterns are revealed, the habits are tangible. The question remains, will you practice them daily, deliberately, and with intention? Because mastery is not a moment, it is a lifelong pursuit. And the sooner you begin, the sooner you become the person the world cannot help but recognize, respect, and embrace.